On Thursday night, my husband and I sat down after the kids went to bed to watch the State of the Union. We're in 2024 right now, and President Biden was giving his State of the Union speech. And so we sat down to watch it, and I was very saddened by, well, a lot of the things that he said, but there were a few things that made my stomach hurt. I just felt like I needed to make a video about it. I guess just share my thoughts about it. So first of all, there was a woman sitting in the crowd, and Biden at one point started talking about women's reproductive rights. And my whole channel, my whole mission, my whole life right now, besides being a wife and mother, is teaching women about their fertility and helping them be as healthy as possible just for their own sake. And also, if planning a family and having a family one day is in their plan, then helping them be able to do so. That is my whole mission in life. And so President Biden is talking about women's reproductive rights. He and I do not have the same idea of how to handle this women's reproductive rights issue. I'll just say that to start. But there was a woman in the crowd who was there because she was from Dallas. And in the state of Texas, there are laws against abortions. At one point, President Biden congratulated her and used her as kind of an example, I guess, of what he thinks is an injustice towards women. This woman lives in Texas, as I said, and she was pregnant and was told by her doctor that she was in a life-threatening pregnancy. And I don't know any more than that. I have no more information other than that. But she was denied the ability to have an abortion in Texas. And so she and her husband went to a different state to get that abortion. And she was sitting in the crowd being congratulated for this abortion. And my heart just sank for her. Because she was told, I'm just going to use the words because our culture doesn't use the words, and that's why we are so confused. She was told to kill her child, and that was the only option that she had. Now, I am not vilifying this woman. What I am doing, though, is recognizing the amount of hurt that must be in her heart for having killed her child. And she was congratulated for this. And no one told her, no one was there consoling her. No one was there asking her if she was okay. We don't understand how, I guess our culture just doesn't understand how big of a deal this is. And she just sat there being congratulated for having killed her child. Whether she knows that or not, that's what she was told to do. She wasn't given any other option. And my heart just dropped for her. And I just wanted to reach through the TV screen and just hug her. Because she needs somebody to love her through this and to tell her what is truth through this, rather than congratulating her for doing what she did. She just needs to be loved. And my heart dropped because she was not being loved. The doctor who told her that she had to kill her child in order to save her own life That was not out of love. Now, I say this never having gone through a scenario like that, never having had to choose between my own life and my child's. So I can't imagine how the pain and the anguish that she must have felt. So that was the first thing. Then President Biden started talking about the issue of IVF, or in vitro fertilization. In Biden's plan, he wants to make IVF something that is reachable, something that is standard practice. After the State of the Union, there's always a rebuttal of the other party, right? So because Biden's a Democrat, there was a Republican rebuttal. And I was really interested to see what this Republican senator had to say about this issue of IVF, and if she was even going to comment on the abortion issue. So the senator from Alabama, Katie Britt is her name, she was filming in her kitchen, very much, a mom, a wife, typical family, American family. But I was very intrigued to see what she was going to say about this women's reproductive issue. She said nothing about the abortion, which made me maybe not sad, but just kind of questioning, like, why wouldn't you talk about that? And when it came to her time to talk about IVF, she also was for IVF being readily available. This woman, I'm assuming because she's Republican and she's Christian because she was wearing a cross necklace, I'm assuming that she's pro-life, which would mean that she's not okay with abortion. And I was very surprised to hear her say what she had to say about in vitro. As I have kind of grown in my understanding of just charting the female cycle and learning about women's reproductive health and really learning about fixing things at the root, right? If a woman is going through some sort of reproductive issue, rather than trying to bypass it or suppress it or put a Band-Aid on it, right? We want to heal it at the root. That's kind of a very generalized idea of what I do and the mission that I'm a part of and that I help with. And so as I've grown more in understanding, women's reproductive health, I've come to the realization that one cannot be pro-life and be pro-IVF. Common practice with IVF is that there are multiple embryos that are conceived every time, or every round, I should say, of IVF. Whatever the number that is, 6, 7, 8. These are human beings, point blank. A human being at the moment of conception has its very own DNA, completely separate from the mother. Hair color, eye color, gender, everything is set right then and there. At the moment of conception, it is a completely separate human being. So with any sort of artificial reproductive technology, right, you are conceiving human beings. We have to understand that point blank first. Standard practice with IVF would be to conceive X amount of embryos of human beings. It would be fatal, usually, for the mother to have every single one of those embryos implanted within her at one time. So what they normally would do is they would kind of pick out the healthiest of the embryos and implant them within the mother. The other ones, well, a few things can happen to the other ones. The first thing is called selective reduction. This would mean that the ones that look maybe unhealthier or not as viable, I guess, would be aborted. So these human lives would be destroyed because they seemingly look maybe unhealthier than the others. So that's the first thing. The second thing that I know of is, or of what would happen with the remainder of the embryos, is that they would be frozen for an indefinite amount of time. And these embryos may never have a chance at life. We cannot be pro-life and pro-IVF. And I want to make one thing very, very clear. Every single child, every single person, and now we have adults even, that were conceived this way, whether it was IVF or some sort of other reproductive technology. Every single one of those human beings that are alive because of any sort of artificial reproductive technology has the same exact amount of dignity as any other human being. They are created in the image and likeness of God. They are destined for great things. God has a plan for each and every one of them. God designed their soul, their body, to be on this earth. So every single child, adult, human being that was conceived this way is no less of a human being than any other. I want to make that very, very clear. But this does not make the way that they were conceived okay. There's a rule of ethics that the ends cannot justify the means. So even if a good end had come from whatever act that it was, right? In this example, a human being being conceived and given a chance at life through IVF, that doesn't make IVF okay. It doesn't make the means okay just because it has a good end. So we have to look at the means, right? Standard practice of IVF is not a pro-life practice. So if we are claiming to be a pro-life generation, or if you are claiming to be pro-life, you are not for abortion, you recognize that a human being starts at the moment of conception, and that murder and killing is never okay, or should never be legalized for that matter. We cannot be pro something that is also using abortion or freezing human beings. So where do we go from here? Because I just said something really hard. It's hard for a lot of people to hear, especially people who have this longing, this deep longing in their heart for a child. What's the solution? Where do we go from here? Well, I do have one solution to propose, and that is something called NaProTechnology. This is something I recently did a video on, actually, just kind of touching the surface of what it is. But it stands for Natural Procreative Technology. And I've learned a lot about this just in my world of teaching women and couples how to chart, and especially those wanting to conceive. A lot of times when couples are struggling with infertility or just struggling with reproductive health issues, at all times, there is an underlying reason for it. Their body isn't working the way that it should. So what an artificial reproductive technology is doing is it's trying to bypass whatever problem that might be and try to force a conception from that. Their success is, or their claimed success, IVF companies, their claimed success is on the amount of pregnancies that they are able to achieve. Their success rate is not actually on how many live human babies are in the mother's arms. That's great that you can get pregnant, but if you can't sustain a pregnancy, there's also something going on, right? That needs to be healed, needs to be treated. So our goal is to get a live human baby in your arms, right? So rather than bypassing the problem or ignoring the problem, or just not even really looking at what the problem might be, NaProTechnology, what it does is it looks at the root of what is happening, what's going on. Does the mother have PCOS? Does she have endometriosis? Does she have very limited amount of discharge or cervical mucus, which is a whole other spiel. I also have a video on that. But cervical mucus, a woman's discharge, is vital to conceiving life. A doctor trained in NaProTechnology, what they are going to do is look at the root of what is going on and heal it, so that hopefully, God willing, that couple is able to achieve a pregnancy naturally in the marital embrace and the loving sexual union between a husband and a wife. They are hopefully able to achieve that pregnancy. This is the alternative. And if you're interested in this alternative, I would be happy to point you in the right direction. And I'll put some links below so that you can become more just informed about what this is. But this is my mission. This is what I do. I am not a doctor, so I'm not practicing NaProTechnology in itself, but I do teach men and women how to chart their cycles so that they can start the process of working with a NaProTechnology doctor. So I have a very little part in this whole spiel and this whole thing called NaProTechnology, but it is how I conceived my own children, and it's the hope that women's health needs. Not bypassing an illness or a disorder, not trying to force something in an unhealthy way, in an undignified way, but NaProTechnology looks at the root of what's going on to heal the woman, to truly love her and her husband through this, what can be and what is usually a very stressful, fearful, hurting time. There is hope for this that maintains the dignity of the sexual embrace, of the man and the woman conceiving, trying to conceive, and of the children that are being conceived. No child is being intentionally killed in this process. No child is being frozen in this process. And for those of you listening who have gone through IVF or any other artificial way of conceiving, you are loved. You are so loved. Well, those are my thoughts from the State of the Union speech. Thanks for listening, if you stayed this long. And I'll see you again next week.